Hey guys, I'm Mike, and today I'd like to invite you to read the Bible with me. We're going to be reading a part of the book of Colossians. Now, reading the Bible doesn't have to be confusing or weird. I really want you to see that anyone can pick up the Bible, read it, and understand it. So as we're going through today's passage, we'll be asking three questions. The first one is, what do I notice? Second one is, what questions do I have? And third, what do I do with what I've just read? Now, this is not the only way to read the Bible, but it's a good one. And since we're jumping in midway, I'd like to remind us of the context of what's being written. Just the last episode, we covered through Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 to 20. And we actually painted a portrait of Jesus. Jesus as the supreme creator over everything and the ruler over everything. And yet the shock that this passage ended with is that this supreme being actually died on the cross to bring peace. Now let's look into our passage for today, Colossians 1:21. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death, to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation. If you continue in the faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. This is the gospel that you heard, and that has been proclaimed to every creature under heaven, and of which I, Paul, have become a servant. So firstly, what do I notice? The first thing is that Paul has shifted from talking about Jesus to talking to you. That is, he's turning to address the Colossians, the people whom he's writing to, and he's mapping out their past, their present, and their future. Verse 21 describes the Colossians' past before they were Christians. It says, you were once alienated from God and were enemies in your mind. See, alienation is separation from God. The Colossians had an anti-God mentality, and their relationship was antagonistic towards God. That was their past. And as I read on, the second thing I notice are the connecting words, which actually show the logic of Paul's writing. Verse 22, but now helps us see the contrast. Now their present state from the past, which is anti-God, enemy of God past, they are now reconciled. It says here, reconciled by Jesus' body through death. In other words, they have been rescued by Jesus' death on the cross, where all their sins were paid for. They don't have to be worried about what they did in the past because Christ has paid for it. And now, no longer enemies of God, but they have peace with him. Paul actually goes on to speak about their future. The future is one where they will be presented before God, holy, unblemished, free from accusation. So despite all that they have done, free from accusation. Now, how are they to continue towards this wonderful life with God? Verse 23 gives one condition. If you continue in the faith, established firm, not moving from the hope held out in the gospel. See, the gospel is all about Jesus. To continue in their journey as Christians, they have to not move from Jesus. See, it is through Jesus that they have a relationship with him, that they have peace with God. It is through Jesus that they have changed from an evil way of living towards a holy life. And it is through Jesus that they have a future where they can stand before God and be free from accusation. So why is Paul saying all of this? Really, if you see the rest of the book, you'll see that there were voices around them telling the Colossians, hey, Jesus is great, but if you want to be a 10 out of 10 Christian, well, Jesus is not enough. And Paul is saying here, look at how amazing Jesus is, right? Look at, if you want evidence for that, you can just look at your own lives. Look at how you have changed, O Colossians, from enemies to having peace with God. That is how amazing Jesus is. Jesus is more than enough. So those are the things I notice. And now I ask what other questions I have. And that's quite common to have questions as you read through the Bible, so don't worry. I'll just go through one of the questions I have, and it's from verse 21. See, I find verse 21 quite strange. Paul actually says the reasons they were enemies in their minds was because of evil behavior. But isn't it more natural to think that evil behavior flows from actually an evil mind, not the other way around? See, Paul is precisely highlighting that order, I think. He's trying to say that the Colossians, because of their lifestyle, because of the way they lived, that actually affected how they thought about God. And actually they would never have come to God, but God reconciled them through Jesus, through his own sacrifice. So that now, through Jesus, their relationship with God kind of went from a negative 10 to a perfect 10. The last question as I read the Bible is to ask, what do I do with what I've read? And the first thing that comes to mind is my own journey. I can remember the time in my past where I was an enemy of God. I did not want to live his way, and I could never be sure what it would be like to stand before him. But now I am certain that I have peace with God, that my relationship with him is a perfect 10. Not because of what I've done or how I've lived my life. I'm still a sinful person. But my relationship with God is a 10 because of Jesus. It is through him that I know I have peace with God. I guess when I read Paul, I think I resonate with him. I think, why would I move away from this Jesus? And if you're a Christian out there, I think it's the same for you. There will be many voices that will tell you, you need to do more religious works. You need to be a super Christian. You need to do all these things. Or maybe say, you need this religious experience. Otherwise, your relationship with God is not good enough. And I think Paul is saying here that no, Jesus is enough. Don't move from him. Don't shift from this Jesus. If you are someone still separated from God, have you ever considered that maybe it is your reluctance to change your life or change your lifestyle that's actually causing your intellectual side to push Jesus away? And if that's you, then you are not alone. The Colossians were exactly like you. The world was exactly like you. But God came to reconcile. And like the Colossians, you have a chance to stop being enemies with God and have peace with him. You can do that by acknowledging that you were once an enemy, but to turn to Jesus, to trust in him as your only hope before God. So we've seen today the change in the Colossians from being enemies to having peace with God through Jesus. If they do not move from him, if they continue to grow and trust in Jesus. Thank you for reading the Bible with me today. I hope that you have a go at reading the Bible yourself and that God's Word will come alive for you. Till next time.